Hey guys, it's Sharky, and as the title suggests, this is why you should not, or maybe you should, put upgraded bushings on your car. This video will be the judge of that, and it'll help you decide. So, before we get into the video, I have the paper behind me, because I know I'm going to forget what I'm trying to get across. Alright, I have the paper, I got the info, I got the receipts. Let's get into the video. Now, before we get into which bushings are right for your car, first we gotta get into what a bushing is as a whole. Now, if you just want to know the pros and cons of your OEM bushings, great, stay, this video is for you. If you're wanting to know if you should get OEM replacement or polyurethane, great, this video is for you. If you have no idea what the I'm talking about, this video is for you. I sound like Oprah right now. Anyways, so what is a bushing? If you're unfamiliar, let's just compare it to the cartilage of your knee. So everyone has cartilage. Obviously, I'm sure we all learned this in school. Cartilage, as you've learned, it helps the joints move. It takes the impact, the force as you're walking, you're jumping, you're standing around, you're squatting. It takes all that force. Now that's what the bushings do. It helps take the force of the road and all the force that you put it through, the abuse that you put it through. So yeah, that's what bushings are as a gist. It basically helps with the weight and the stress. For this video, I'm going to split it into two portions. So the first one's going to be the OEM bushings, an aspect of the bushings, and then there are going to be the polyurethane bushings, the aspects of those, and if you should do either one of those. Alright, so let's get into the OEM. Alright, so first of all, OEM bushings are almost always going to be rubber. So rubber is, if you felt it, which I'm sure most of you have, it's soft, it's pretty giving, but it also wears down pretty fast because it's very prone to weather abuse. So if you've left rubber out or you have like an old tool that you've left out, it starts to kind of crack and deteriorate, basically. If you've had your weather seals do that, you know what I'm talking about. Same thing for your bushings. So if you know your physics, softer helps absorb a lot of pressure. So when you're driving on the road, you're taking in those potholes, because the manufacturers, keep in mind, they think about what you're going to be doing for public road use. So they're keeping potholes in mind, they're keeping cracks in mind, they're keeping grooves in mind, they're keeping puddles in mind, potholes with puddles. They're keeping all of that in mind. For that reason, they keep OEM replacements of the bushings pretty cheap, because everybody knows rubber, it wears out pretty fast. So for the most part, the OEM replacements are pretty cheap. And also, for the most part, if your car is stock or barely modified, just get OEM replacements. You don't need poly bushings. It's not for you. If you have really worn out bushings and you just replace them with OEM replacements and they're brand new and feeling nice, you're going to feel nice. You're going to notice a big difference. It's going to feel like you got upgraded race bushings. It's going to feel like a whole new brand of luxury, right? So sometimes all you need to do is just replace those with replacements. But yeah, overall, your OEM replacement, it's just a lot more comfortable because it's softer. You're going to not feel as much of the road. Obviously, for a race car, you want to feel out everything, so maybe not for you. You also could stick to OEM replacement bushings. It's not really a huge factor unless you're heavily modified. It's cheaper. It's a lot cheaper. My polyurethane bushings were $300 for a set, which is pretty pricey for some circles, but, it's some plastic circles. Well, not really plastic, it's polyurethane, but I'm calling it plastic because that's how it feels. Alright, so now let's start getting into polyurethane bushings. Now, polyurethane bushings, or poly bushings for short, as they're more commonly called, they are basically the opposite of OEM. So they're stiff, they have a longer lifespan. Instead of deteriorating and cracking, they start to squeak. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's some coating rubbing off, maybe it's them getting a little bit more flex in. I'm not really too adjusted on that research, but yeah, they do start to squeak. So that already makes you a lot less comfortable. Now, because it's a lot stiffer, it means it does not absorb as much of that pressure. It doesn't absorb all the force that you're putting onto the car. So you're going to feel every aspect. Now, most poly manufacturers put on their box or in their website for off-road use only, and sometimes it's because it's a legal aspect, if you've seen, like, intakes for California, uh, off-road exhausts, uh, coilovers. Most will say it's for off-road use only, which they know you're not going to. But when they say off-road use, it's usually either really off-road or it's for track, because they build these things for track cars. Now, tracks are well maintained. They're they don't have cracks in them. They don't have potholes. They are oftentimes not going to be wet, because most of the time when you're doing track runs, it's going to be in nice dry conditions. Sometimes you do wet runs, but not everyone does that. So keep in mind, they build poly bushings for track. They do not build it for everyday driving, daily driving. They don't build it for stock cars. They keep in mind race cars who are going to be driving super hard, and they're going to need that stiffness to feel every aspect of the road. That stiff, smooth road, right? Now, because it's stiffer as a race car, like I mentioned earlier, you want to feel every aspect of your car. You want to be able to close your eyes or even just drive and feel every part of your car. That is a pro for the poly bushings. Now, if you have a stock car, it's just going to be super bumpy. It's not going to be fun. You're going to be driving to work and you're going to be feeling every single little bump on the road. You're going to think you hit something hard when all you did was, like, maybe drive over a bolt or a stick. Right, I'm over exaggerating a little bit, but you get the gist. Oh, if you're wanting an in-between, they do have these things where it's basically poly outside but liquid inside. So it's a little bit softer and squishier than just full-on poly bushings, but I've heard a lot of people don't recommend those, and I don't know a lot of info on them, so it's not really something I could give information on. So at this point, you're probably thinking, well, I want to spend the money because they look cool. They're like fire red or blue, and it's a mod. Like, I want to upgrade my suspension. Well, if your car is basically stock, you don't need to upgrade your suspension for anything. Like I was saying earlier, you could just get OEM replacements and they would do wonders for you. Just from going from worn out bushings to all new factory bushings, it would be like butter for a stock car. Now, for more modified to heavily modified cars, I would definitely swing towards that poly direction. Although, if you street daily your car, I still wouldn't. Just because, I mean, they're not made for the streets. Your street and stock cars do not need them. It would be a waste of time. You could spend that 300, 400, 500 elsewhere, right? You could get yourself some headers, make yourself sound nice. You can get some beefier tires within your ratio and still put on some improvement. You could get better brake pads. You could get better rotors. You could get anti-sway bars for that money. Like, there's a lot of other things you could spend that money on. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm not going to tell you what to and what not to buy, but this is just my input on it and my personal opinion and my research. Like I said, I have bushings that I bought, and Alright, so my mic died, but no worries. I could just talk a little louder. But yeah, for the gist of it, if you have a stock car, barely modified, you daily the car, or it's just a general street car, I generally wouldn't look in the direction of poly bushings because it's not going to be worth it. You're just going to be uncomfortable and there's not really going to be any gain from it. But again, I'm not certified to really tell you what to do. This is just my research, the facts that I brought in. I don't know what you're building. You know what you're building. You know what you should do. I don't. This is just some direction. I'm building a race car. This is going to be for track use. You know, it's going to need to take stiffer bushings because I'm going to be driving this thing hard. It's going to be taking a lot of power, a lot of force that a normal street car is not used to taking. The daily would not see this abuse. Now, I personally got energy suspension bushings. It was $300. I think it was red, might have been orange. I can't really see hues like that, so a little colorblind, but you know, I mean, you shouldn't be spending an extra $300 just to get some bright red bushings. It's not worth it if it's not going to be worth it to your gains or, you know, any of that in general. But anyways, that's going to be the end of this video. If you came to this video for a direction of what you should do, if you really didn't know much about poly bushings, if you didn't know much about OEM bushings. If you don't know if you should do poly or OEM, hopefully this gave you some direction. If you were just looking for some information, great. That's gonna conclude this video. Have a good day. Damn, can't believe the mic died on me.